Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Andres. I guess I'm the only American here. That's too bad. It would have been more interesting maybe if we had some people disagreeing with me. That would have been interesting. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate it. Like I said, my name is Andres. And before we begin, I'd like to thank my tech person. Thank you very much. I also want to thank the venue. Thank you, 5S Indian Resto. This is the best Indian resto in Davao and the best resto in Davao. So thank you. So if you go to YouTube, let's just get into the video. If you go to YouTube and you search Risky Edges, what we'll be watching Bowling for America, or you can go to the channel itself. Either way, we'll watch Bowling for America. So let's go ahead and start, and then maybe, and then I'll say a few things afterwards, and then we will maybe have a good conversation. Okay, so that was that was Bowling for America. That was the documentary. Thank you, everyone, for coming and watching. This week is the first Father's Day since Uvalde. It is 4 weeks. This week will also be 4 weeks since Uvalde, and this week will also be 1 month since Uvalde. I'd like to say some things that were not mentioned in Bowling for America, and maybe that will help get the discussion going. First, years ago, I was a history teacher, and afterwards, I was a paralegal. So I'm familiar with both history and law. The Second Amendment was never about individuals owning guns. It was written when we were afraid that England might conquer us after we became independent. And 19 years after we became independent, we went to war with England again, and England burned the White House. And we eventually won that war. Now, the National Rifle Association, the NRA, didn't even exist until 85 years after American independence. And even then, it was not, the NRA was not about individuals owning guns. It was about marksmanship, the art of firing a rifle accurately. The NRA did not become a political organization until 1977, 45 years ago, when a group democratically took over the NRA and started the American individual gun ownership movement. So this whole idea that the Second Amendment and the NRA are about individual gun ownership, it's only 45 years old, this idea. And the Supreme Court never said that the Second Amendment guaranteed an individual gun ownership until 2008. So the Supreme Court ruling that the Second Amendment is about individual gun ownership is only over 10 years old. The second thing I wanted to say is that I do not come from a law enforcement background, but I think one of the takeaways from both Columbine and Uvalde is that cops should not establish a perimeter first. They should breach immediately. In other words, if you're the only cop at the scene of an active shooter in a school, go in and kill him before he kills others. Don't wait for backup. Maybe he'll kill you first, but at least he kills a cop and not a civilian. And maybe by the time he kills you, backup has arrived, and maybe they'll kill him before he kills anyone else. I also want to say something that the American writer and my favorite writer, Chris Hedges, has been writing about for over 10 years. There are a lot of white people in America who have lost everything. They've lost their jobs, they've lost their homes and their families, and that's one of the reasons they want to hold on to their guns, because that's the only power and control they feel they have left. Take away their gun and they lose more than everything. And lastly, thank you all very much for coming. It is necessary for democracy that we put down our phones and meet in person in reality. I'm thinking of the words of the American playwright and director Karen Malpede. The theater needs to be funded with public money, as it was in Athens, where it began, and where all citizens were required to attend the dramatic festival, because the theater is, when it functions, a corrective against the excesses of empire. As such, it remains necessary to the functioning of a democratic state, and though it might make the functionaries of such a state uncomfortable, it will and must be a beacon of truth. At its best, such a theater provides the experience of heightened feeling, heightened aliveness, heightened awareness of self and other. It makes us more human and humane, and therefore more able to take action in the world. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, and with that, let's get into questions. If there are any questions or comments. Yes, okay. So this gunman who killed these children, why did he do that? Very good question. The vast majority of these gunmen in America are white, male, young. They have almost no friends. They don't have a girlfriend, and they have a anger toward women in general. So instead of talking about their feelings to a therapist, perhaps, or talking to somebody, not all men in this demographic, but a lot of them, they choose to get a gun and, instead of dealing with their problems, taking out their frustrations on all of these innocent victims. Well, that's another thing. Some of them also have financial hardships. In this case, in Uvalde, he was not white. He was Latino, like myself. For Uvalde, I have not seen, but sometimes it is racial. In Buffalo, there was a white man who called himself a white supremacist, and he went into a black neighborhood and he shot and killed. He went in there with the intention to shoot and kill black people. There's a mass shooting in the United States every day, which is defined as a shooting where 4 or more people are shot. And so there are so many examples, sadly, to choose from. But Dylan Ruth, a few years ago, was a young white male who called himself a racist, and he went into a black church on a Sunday in the middle of service and started shooting. And he said, he left a note, he survived, but he said he wanted to start a racial war. So in some of these cases, it is racially motivated. I would not say the motivation is more racial than anything else. I would not say that. I would say the basic motivation is that this is oversimplifying. These young men are unhappy, and I know that sounds oversimplistic, and it is, but some of these young men, not all unhappy young men are going to go out and kill people, but when you have all these unhappy young men and it's easy to buy a gun in America, which it is, it's easier to buy a gun than a car. In America, you have to take a driver's test, get a driver's license, then you go buy a car. You can, as long as you're 18 in some states, I shouldn't laugh, but if you're 18 in some states, you can just buy a gun. So the majority of them are men, and the motivation is that they're just unhappy, and instead of getting therapy or instead of getting help, they take out their frustrations on these innocent victims. We talked, it was mentioned a little bit in the video that when you talk about guns in America, you're talking about the entire political system. Now, that observation is exactly on point. We're the richest country in the world. Why do we have all of these young men who are unhappy? Well, there's a lot to go in there. And yes, we're the richest country in the world, but that only means that the GDP and the stock market is high. The truth is, before COVID, homelessness was increasing. Europe, Canada, Japan, they all have a similar program where everyone's health care is either completely paid for by the government or partially, or there's some kind of system where not all systems are the same. The British system is not the same as the French system, for example, but they all result in everyone being able to go to the hospital. Nobody in these countries says, I can't go to hospital, I don't have money. America's the richest country in the world. We don't have anything like that because the privately owned hospitals and the private prescription drug companies want to make more money, and they will in America, by saying healthcare is a product I can sell, as opposed to Canada, Europe, and Japan, who say, no, 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 healthcare is a basic human right. We have to provide this to people, like we provide law enforcement, fire departments, military. You don't pay for the fire department to help you. You don't pay for public school teachers to teach you. You could argue, well, I do pay for that in my taxes. Okay, but Canada, Europe, and Japan have found ways to make education, law enforcement protection, fire department protection, and education and healthcare rights. And so the simple answer to your question is, it's not a right in America. The number one reason Americans go bankrupt is because they cannot afford their medical bills. If you can believe that. The NRA is very powerful. These private hospitals, these private companies that own these private hospitals and own the pharmaceuticals, they're very powerful, meaning they will donate to the campaigns of these politicians, so that even when the politicians say, elect me, I'll give you health care, it won't happen. Trump, it's corruption. It's corruption. Trump said, I'm going to give everybody health care. He didn't. Now, he was only president for one term, so maybe you could argue, oh, he didn't have time. Our country, the United States, and not only the United States, but the United States has a long history and tradition of civil disobedience. One would argue that that's how we became a country. We disobeyed, we broke the law, we disobeyed His Majesty and became our own country. Dr. King led boycotts and peaceful, non-violent law-breaking for civil rights. And most recently, Chris Smalls, he's just an ordinary guy working at an Amazon fulfillment center. He's not college educated, I don't think. He didn't go to university, I don't think. But he organized his workplace to get better working conditions. So what Americans need, and it's no guarantee that it will succeed, and it is not easy. It's much easier said than done. But in the new tradition of people like Chris Smalls, we need sustained civil disobedience. Like another example, what was mentioned in the video. In America, their schools are on summer break. First day of school, teachers and students in all the public schools, all the schools period, should just say, we're not going to school, we're staying home until. better yet, we're not going to school, and we are, in fact, instead going to fill the streets with our bodies, so no cars can get through, no traffic can get through, the economy will stop, the country will stop, until, for example, you meet our specific demand. One specific demand can be abolish the Second Amendment. Yes, I know exactly what you mean. So let me say two things. The first thing is, America also has a tradition, and not only America, of things changing. We'll never end slavery. Yes, we will. Women will never be able to vote. Yes, they will. We will always segregate the white people from the black people. No, we won't. There'll never be a black president in America. Yes, there was. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing, these people who you're talking about, I mentioned them earlier, Americans who are clinging to their guns now more than ever because of economic hardship. Chris Hedges, who I mentioned earlier, has been saying this for over 10 years. If we reintegrate these people into the economy, they will be a little less angry. You know, a lot of these gun owners, like who you were talking about, would they feel the need for that gun so much if they had a high-paying job? Would they feel the need to have a gun so much if not only did they have a high-paying job, but their spouse didn't need a job and they could afford to send their kids to college without taking loans if their kids wanted to go to college, and if they could afford all of their medical bills, a previous topic we touched on. You know, if all of those things were happening with these gun owners, would they really feel the need to have that gun? Would they be so angry? I mentioned earlier the majority of these shooters are young, white, male, no friends, almost no friends, no girlfriend, and a general anger toward women. Would they be a little less angry if they had more money? Well, let me ask this: what are the what are the gun laws here in the Philippines? Like, if I'm a citizen of the Philippines, my grandparents are Filipino, my parents are Filipino, I'm Filipino, and for whatever reason, I wanted to buy a gun. For whatever reason, how would I go about that, if anybody knows? Buying a gun here in the Philippines. Okay, that difficult? It's difficult. A lot of little joke, but everything in the Philippines is difficult, right? Paperwork, go to City Hall, this clearance, that clearance. Yeah. So I think we have time just for one more comment or question. I do personally believe abolishing the Second Amendment will work, but the other question you're asking, I think, is how realistic or how soon will that happen? But there are many things we can do. Let's assume for the moment that the Second Amendment will always be there. Let's assume that. We can do things without abolishing the Second Amendment. We can register all gun purchases. We can raise the age from 18 to 25. We can have a universal background check. And we can ban not all guns, but maybe certain kinds of guns, like the AR-15, which was used. So abolishing the Second Amendment is not the only option. I'd love to continue. I could go on all night, but we're out of time. So again, my name is Andres. My channel is Risky Edges. Please share, please comment, please like, please subscribe and turn on bell notifications. Thank you everybody for coming. Terrific discussion. Maybe we can do this again sometime. Thank you very much.